players will ask for some security of payment. If they find that this is the way of revenue earning to the ULBs, and the political will is, again I will say, training, empowerment, and political will is there, I think we could see a very good success in PPP model in India. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Majumdar. We've got, I think, about 20 minutes or so for Q&A, perhaps a bit longer. Let's see how it goes. I have a few to begin with. First question for Ms. Mukherjee. Ms. Mukherjee, one of the questions that was posed by Professor Tare was, is there any risk in handing over sewage treatment to private investors? From a utility perspective, how do you look at it?
To the extent, let's look at it in two ways. One is that well-regulated, I don't see a risk. But regulation is key. Now, the other issue is that of public perception. And the idea that public infrastructure, whether in water and wastewater, should it be owned by, and particularly in such a politically sensitive area as water, should it be owned by the private sector or just run by the private sector? I don't see risks in operation, lease, but I can really see a major perception risk in terms of handing over ownership of assets.
Okay. Professor Tare has actually proposed a model here, which I think, as far as I see, has got three key elements. One, of course, is the zero liquid discharge that he talks about. Other is the fact that this is a DBFO, design, build, finance, and operate model. And he's suggesting annuity-based, plus income from commercial exploitation. What is your viewpoint on these four elements, so three elements?
We're definitely looking at the design, build, finance, and operate model. Okay. That's a model I think that's doable. In terms of, I think it's been working in certain other areas of the country also. I think Alandur was an example. We are, in terms of the other, I think the issue that I said was own is a problem. The other models can work.
Okay. Can I get comments on that model from the other panelists as well? Mr. Yamdagni, perhaps from you first. Yeah. Mr. Yamdagni, and then Mr. Amanullah, and then Mr. Majumdar. Yeah, just brief comments, please.
I think for the investor, having to be able to lease out an investment which is being planned out, and actually adding a little bit of assets in terms of being able to get a better kind of tertiary treatment and be able to run that as a service and a revenue model is definitely a workable model on the PPP side.
Okay. So you think all four elements can work here, as in zero discharge and DBFO and annuity-based? Mr. Amanullah, your organization has a lot of experience in this area.
Sure. I do definitely agree on the ownership part that Ms. Mukherjee keeps on emphasizing. I think
no, specifically about
sure,
Professor Tare's model.
All four are absolutely fine, but ownership, the private party can never ever own a system that has been actually traditionally, as well as from the ownership perspective. That's my vision, and that's my actually thought, that the ownership has to always remain with the client. Like the roads. I mean, we build the road, we run the road for 20 years, but the ownership is never with the private party. The ownership will remain with the government. Similarly, all these 4 points. I mean, ZLD is a great concept. I mean, I could have actually spoken while I was speaking earlier, but all these 4 points really make sense. Okay. And as well as the ownership, for example, the real ownership to be with the
Mr. Majumdar.
I will touch upon 2 points, Madam's 2 points. One is ownership, another is regulation, which I forgot to mention. Ownership, if we go to the basic concept of the financial model, why we talk of ownership land could be on lease basis, on lease rental. But where we are investing on the assets, if that ownership is not with us, if we don't get the depreciation benefit unnecessary, it will be built into the cost and higher the price. That's why ownership to the private investor, so long the duration of the concession period is there, is required for the benefit of the ultimate consumers.
Okay. Before you go further, any comments from Ms. Mukherjee on that? The issue of ownership of the plant, not the land. I guess that's what he's saying.
I think I
Pass?
won't respond to that immediately. Let me think this through.
All right.
Great.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Majumdar, you want to continue?
Another
Yeah,
one, regulation, which I forgot. It's also like power, because I was involved during power. I'm basically a power engineer, really, now in water. So power, the way power reforms has been there is a CERC, Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. The same way, if there is a water regulatory commission, who will look after in all these regulatory issues, along with the tariff, etc., whatever the change in law, etc., whatever happens, I think that will, and in all states there will be a state wing, like CRC has got ACRC. I think that could be a viable proposition.
Okay. Yeah, please.
With respect to the depreciation, I think in the road model also, the private players do take the depreciation. It doesn't mean that the ownership of that road is actually in the hands of the private player. I mean, ownership is always with the government. We can't say that this road is mine. We can never ever say that. We are just there. We are doing the build, operate, and transferring that road, right? But all this financial stuff that has already been taken care of. Now, in case that we don't get the depreciation benefit at all. If there is an issue with that, we can always build that into the financial model and charge some extra to cover up that risk. But, I strongly believe that the ownership of these assets actually belong to the government, and they should be with the government. We are there to just run the system with most efficient methods and, with the KPIs that has been given to us, and basically transfer it to the government when the time comes. Thank you.
Mr. Yamdagni has something to say.
Yeah, I think the way to make it financially viable for the investor as well, it's critical to look at not only the investment of the plant but the O&M as well, and figure out an annuity model, to be able to say, well, the government can spend on the network, because that's an asset that you shouldn't be spending on. But the asset of the plant itself and the O&M can be actually made on an annuity model, which is highly bankable and financially very good. So that would be the best possibility for a PPP investor.
Okay. Next question is, and perhaps Mr. Majumdar can take a first crack at this one. What can we learn from the PPP experience so far? I mean, we've had some beginnings, Kolhapur, Nagpur, and perhaps Udaipur. What can we learn? Yeah, so just press that. Yeah, it's fine.
It's the problem with the concept, because whatever we have faced, it's mainly on regulatory issues where we are stuck up. Really, maybe might be on land acquisition. Somewhere even we expected the VGF to come, that has not come so far. And somewhere, if you say Kolhapur, when you said, we have found it was not done, whoever has been awarded the contract that time, PPP model was known to that bidder, a ridiculously low price was quoted and unviable. And again, I will add, when you see a bankable project, why this water project is different from the road is, again, road, yes, you can say road is the land, really.
Right.
So here, that's what you are building up the assets.
So how do you think we could have avoided the situation, the Kolhapur situation?
No, Kolhapur, we are not there. I mean,
not you, but how could we?
So, that again, I think now even the bidders have understood the PPP, the BOT concept.
Right.
I think basic risk sharing, etc., was not in the mind of that bidder.
Okay.
That's why.
Mr. Amunala, what lessons do you draw from whatever experience we've had in wastewater treatment in sewage? and sewage treatment?
We actually have done a lot of wastewater in the country on mostly on the EPC part. There are few that we have done on the O&M.
Latour and a few other places, although not wastewater, but...
Yeah, so water, we have a couple of projects that we are doing right now. We have Aurangabad, Bhiwandi, we have just got 2 O&M contracts.
And so what are the key learnings in terms of do's and don'ts?
So again, coming back to the capacity of the ULBs, as well as again, the VGF was supposed to be coming back. The financial closure is stuck because of many other issues. So the key learnings is again the capacity of the client as well as regulatory, as Mr. Majumdar Pranab talked about. Again, it's basically the third P, which is sailing together as a partner. So these are some issues. These are the initial phases, and I believe that once we are there, we will be all fine.
Ms. Mukherjee, you earlier talked about these kinds of PPPs as political landmines. So what lessons do you draw? I'm sure you've studied all of these other PPPs, or at least your organization has in depth. So what sort of lessons did you draw?
I think part of the issues, and we haven't had major problems with our public-private partnerships in wastewater because we haven't moved into these models yet. That said. But water, we're going ahead. And what we find is one of the issues that is critical. Part of it, of course, is a mutual due diligence, which means that when you design the project, there has to be a very strong process of mutual due diligence, both at the level of the public utility as well as at the level of the operator, concessionaire, whatever you'd like to call that entity. Now, I think the Nagpur water PPP fails because there were major surprises for the concessionaires which were not taken care of in the risk-sharing model. The other point that we need to look at, once you've got the due diligence and you've got a regulatory mechanism in place, is look at communications. Communicate. Keep talking to people and keep talking to varied groups of people. In Delhi, we find that it is important not just to communicate at the local level with the resident welfare associations, with the local MLA, with the councillors, but also to talk to a range of civil society organizations to at least try and be as transparent as possible. I mean, when we bid out, our bid documents are online. They're available to anybody who wants to see the bid documents. Once the contract is awarded, the contract is online. So again, it's available to anybody. It's on our site. Come and look at it. So the perception also that a public utility is acting against public interest. I mean, interestingly, no matter, there's a great deal of tolerance of inefficiency on part of the public utilities. I think Sam touched upon that. Now, I see that, it's heartening to see how much confidence people have in the Delhi Jal Board the moment we start talking about public-private partnerships. So, therefore, it is important to actually be completely transparent, to have strong defenders of the process as well in the public domain. So that, I think, is important.
Okay. Any comments from you?
Yeah, I think just 2 quick ones. One is contract framework, which is, I think, extremely, especially on the water side, extremely important because a lot of unknowns are there, drawings are not there, information is not known, and a process of actually a pre-drafted way of resolution, because that is something that people are struggling, and the projects become unviable as you can't resolve the things in the long term, and for a financial investor, time is money. So,
okay, you're going to come back. Yes. Okay.
Let me nuance that a bit. I think I'd still maintain that ownership of assets, it is preferable at this stage of public-private contracts. And at this stage of being able to manage the process, it is better that ownership of assets continue to be with the public sector. And you can build in the depreciation into the